Good evening, I'm Wilbur Cook. I've been gone for a minute. We're back at Hand Up Recovery Homes, and we now are working on some gun violence prevention. You know, as we used to state way back in the day, several years ago when we were on,
Back in the day.
back in the day.
Like when I used to live at Hand Up Recovery Home.
Oh, wow, you didn't have to tell all that, but we're glad you don't mind. Yes, we used to do primarily housing for those recovering from alcoholism, substance abuse, and our target area and goal was to help African American men and men of various cultures to change, and we were very successful. Matter of fact, shout out to Howard Patton, who transitioned a little over a year ago, who was a Caucasian gentleman, came from downstate Illinois, who ended up being our number one fan, our number one advocate, number one alumni. Howard went everywhere and talked about two things: his African American church, Care to Cincinnati AME, and a Hand Up Recovery Homes that helped him make the final changes in his life, and he wasn't going back until he went to heaven. He went to heaven. So he died sober, clean, and helping people. He had what we call a CTA ministry.
CTA.
Howard brought more people to the church while he was riding on CTA than most members brought to the church outside the church in the neighborhood or from their own homes and or communities. But Howard would be riding the Western Line, talk to people and convince them to come to church with him. And Howard, I invited him to church. He was already doing a community breakfast as a service project. And a little bit about that. And one day we were in one of them, quote, other spiritual groups recovery meetings, and Howard got mad at somebody talking about he was a minister and said they all get their licenses on the internet. And I said, Howard need to learn and meet some people. He already know me and my pastor. They get formal education from some of the best
Minister Cook,
theological seminaries.
Your ministerial training. You went to Moody or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I went a step up. I went up there on Northwestern's campus on Sheridan Road to the great evangelical institution, Garrett Evangelical Seminary, of which James Cohen, some of you all may have heard of him, or you missed it when Barack Obama was running for president. Jeremiah Wright mentioned Black Theology. The founder of Black Theology was right there on the North Shore, Northwestern campus at Garrett Evangelical Seminary that sits almost dead in the middle of Northwestern campus with over 100-year land grant to do seminary studies. And it's one of the most academic universities in America, and it's world renowned. People come from Korea, Japan, China, Africa,
Northwestern University,
Egypt to go to school. No, they go to the seminary, Garrett Evangelical. But enough of that, because they not sponsoring our service in the community. Our services in the community for the gun violence prevention program and reduction program is courtesy of the Justice Advisory Council of Cook County in collaboration and funded by American Rescue money through our Illinois Department of Human Service gun violence prevention organization. So those are the main reasons that we're back on air to help stop gun violence. Our target area are two of the most notorious areas of the West Side. One being the infamous Heroin Highway, where we've tried to save lives through recovery. 290 and Pulaski Road. Blue Line Pulaski stop. Now the Holman Blue Line stop. And the Cicero stop. Most famous for the corridor where all of the city traffic come to the west side to get drugs, and where all our suburbanites come from all over the city and suburbs, either the expressway or the Blue Line, to come off to get drugs. And unfortunately, with the opioid epidemic of mixing fentanyl and oxycontin into the heroin, it's killing an astronomical number of people.
The wild west side, Mayor Brandon Johnson's neighborhood.
Yes, and unfortunately the mayor has dealt with that in his family as well as many of us. But our main goal is to try to prevent the proliferation of gun violence in our area. And our main goal also is to reduce the deaths from gun violence in our area. And we plan to use a strategy whereby We help young people not go down the road of 20 years of madness by not dealing with their mental health issues, by not dealing with their personal struggles, by not dealing with the beginnings of what we call alcoholism and substance abuse.
Telling my story, 20 years of
Well, if you're so anxious. And my guest here, by default, I was trying to bring James Shannon on, but I was out running to another meeting and forgot the phone to call James Shannon. So I had to go to my assistant, who will sometimes be the person who does the main talking and interview on the show, which you realize he's ready to talk. He's been since the start. We didn't plan for this to be a comedy half hour, but who knows? Sometimes we have to lighten the mood in spite of the struggle, because it's serious enough dealing with gun violence without always being so glum about what happens. And part of the process is trying to help people find more happiness, more joy, more lighthearted moments in their life, and get through some of the struggles and pain so that they don't create more violence and they don't act out by shooting people, and they don't act out, get angry, and end up the victim of gun violence.
Sometimes one of my Alcoholics Anonymous sponsors, LaShawn, he actually is a comedian. So he actually, started talking and learned how to, a lot of 12-step meetings I go to is better than watching Dallas back in the day on Friday night.
Yeah. That's interesting you mentioned that, because today I had to say, everybody that gets clean personally don't stop doing a lot of illegal activities. But the most hideous is when they get off drugs but go back and still hustle them in the street and help other people die or destroy their life. Why would you clean yourself up to continue to help destroy others? I can't fathom that type of thinking. However, most of them justification is it's the money. So we're here also as we try to help young people and older people get away from the violence, is to provide them other opportunities. One of them is recovery, Eric mentioned. And we have a little feature meeting we have that we created that may come up on the screen shortly regarding, okay, all right, this is the proper spacing for it. Hand Up Recovery Home has a meeting we started back on Thursday nights. The first meeting we've started since the pandemic shut everybody down. And it's from 5:30 to 6:30 every Thursday evening, 4032 West Van Buren, Chicago, 60624. We will eventually, when we get Eric up and ready, we may go hybrid, but right now it's an in-person meeting. And feel free to stop by any Thursday evening. Also, we eventually plan to do
week.
Right, and events. Oh, okay, great.
Next week.
Commitment. Thank you.
Service work.
Thank you, Eric. I see you still lighthearted. All right, and I am glad he came in good spirits, and he's had a great blessing about humanity lately, in a situation he dealt with where he was in trouble with the job for a minute. He had lost government property. But anyway, it was found, thanks to good-hearted people.
I thought you was talking about the time where I had to talk to employee assistance person when I worked for the county.
Oh, no, I'm not going to talk about that representative that you helped and got fired by. But anyway.
No, actually.
What happened?
I can say that I worked for Gene Moore, the county recorder of deeds, and I was blessed. But I ended up having a substance abuse problem. And thank God that some institutions like the county has an employee assistance person that actually reached out and pointed me to organizations like a Hand Up Recovery Home. They pointed me toward Haymarket and actually got me some help. So alcoholism and drug addiction is actually a disease. Most people that create gun violence, most people that go to jail today are actually high, drunk.
75 to 78% are on most surveys are high or drunk
Thank
when
God for our
they
congressman.
commit those crimes that cause them to be in the penitentiary.
Our Congressman, Danny Davis, he actually has helped more people in recovery than probably anybody in this country, perhaps. He actually really got Congress really more involved in coming up with treatment versus jails. Back in the day, we did a referendum countywide.
Lord.
We got over 300,000 signatures on a petition to put on the ballot treatment versus jails.
And
Back-
80% of the vote on the referendum that was on the ballot.
back when HMOs didn't want to cover treatment for individuals suffering from substance abuse. Now it's commonplace, and medical experts recognize the importance of treatment and how it helps prevent gun violence.
Right.
Kudos to my congressman.
Yeah,
Danny K.
kudos.
Davis.
And when the referendum was on the ballot in Cook County, over 80% of the people said that people should receive treatment on demand. The primary goal was that the legislators should know that we don't have enough beds when people want to go to treatment. And some of the people, unfortunately, who died from opioid addiction are people who probably went to Haymarket and they were full. Probably went to a Safe Haven and they were full. Probably went to Ad Detox and they were full. Possibly went to Crossroad Interventions and they were full. And when they couldn't get treatment, unfortunately, what a drug addict does is, or alcoholic is, they go back to their vice.
go-to.
They go back to deal with that frustration.
Their coping mechanism.
They go back to getting high, and some of them don't make it back to the hospital. They don't make it back to the treatment center.
Thank God for people like Skip Land. He's like an
Yeah,
angel.
God bless his soul.
Yeah.
He was an angel here on earth.
Skip Land basically told people in recovery to go to meetings, go to 12-step meetings, get a sponsor. He told them to, write their fourth step, write their inventory of pluses and minuses, things that hurt them, things that helped them, on a matchbook cover. He didn't tell them to go do a 10-week study of their life, and he just said put it on the matchbook, keep it simple, and get going and move
Is that because
forward.
they were smoking still? They got rid of the drugs and alcohol, but some of them, it took a longer time to get rid of the cigarettes. I got rid of the cigarettes after 4 years in recovery. I'm 33 years on the 20th of May, sober. Them liquor stores don't get my money.
Thank God.
Man,
never
I don't
started
have to
that habit of cigarette.
Go get. And you know what? My favorite substance was weed, man, and it's legal now. But that is no excuse for me to go get high again. Liquor's been legal the whole time I stopped drinking, and I haven't gone back to drink. Therefore, just because marijuana is legal is no excuse to go back to getting high. And it's no excuse to not go tell your pharmacy the gabapentin and the ibuprofen doesn't work. I need my medical marijuana card. That is not an excuse. Doesn't mean people won't use it, but it is not an excuse.
Thank God there's programs like HSI that focuses on people not going back to things like
Heroin, methadone. Okay.
methanol maintenance. So that's
Right.
a legal maintenance drug, but it still is a drug. And
Wow.
Alcoholics Anonymous, for instance, tries to keep you free from all minority
Right.
substances like cocaine.
Well,
and
I heard that there was applause on the West Side because one of the agencies that's known for people staying on methadone for years and years and years and years has a new executive director, and that doctor wants to graduate people away from methadone
Amen.
into
Hallelujah.
actual total abstinence from all mind, mood, all this. And she has started to graduate folks who have completed methadone maintenance, meaning they've had it reduced to the point they can come off it successfully and not go back to using heroin and or other illegal drugs and build their life in total abstinence, if I heard correctly. And that is great.
Interesting you mentioned that. I was actually doing some recovery coaching thanks to Hand Up Recovery Program's peer coaching, actually.
Yes.
I was talking to one of my peers in the recovery
Take your time.
circles,
Yes.
and he was telling me that there's people that are using fentanyl because of that methadone. They used it so long, and they're hooked on methadone now.
Yeah.
So it's good that there's programs out there that.
Right. And we're going to change gears for a minute. We're going to bring up another guest, a younger guest. He's going to talk more about what youth struggle with in the community, aside from just the drugs and alcohol, but possibly many other issues, employment, trying to become entrepreneurs, struggling with the economic landscape that they're provided by us because we didn't build enough to help them transition straight into jobs. We actually gave ground in our generation in the job market, and our younger people, younger children, younger godchildren are suffering because of it. So now we want to thank Eric for his time, his input on recovery,
Yes, sir.
his service to the community. This is one guy. I have to give him credit for he goes. No matter what situation he struggled with in life, he always find a way to help others. And he has some of the best connections from the campaign of Roland Burris to the congressman to Recorder Moore to various others. The first
Maywood
Republican mayor,
folks.
he was the Village of Maywood trustee, and he also helped elect the first Republican mayor in the Village of Maywood in
It was a nonpartisan election. Ralph Conner.
it was considered nonpartisan, but God bless his soul, he was straight up Republican. Good man, though. Ralph was nice to all of us. All right, take care.
All right.
Blessings. And I'll see you shortly.
Yes, sir.
All right, now we have Jeremy Lattimore Caesar. Oh, okay, Caesar coming up. Excuse me, you all. I've been stuck in a time warp with this name thing. So Caesar is up, and sir, you want to tell us a little bit about you and things that you think can help us in the community?
Well, just briefly about myself. I am a marketing and brand. I own my own company, and I provide photography and videography services. Part of the reason that kind of got me into entrepreneurship, specifically with photography, was that when I lived in Florida, I actually needed a therapeutic outlet. I needed something that would allow me to find a way to vent, because through life, one thing I started to realize, Black men, we're not always necessarily taught how to handle our emotions.
Okay, good point.
We're not always taught how to develop coping mechanisms around the hardships that we deal with in everyday life. Immediately when we come out the womb, just by the color of our skin, we're already faced with adversity from the world. Depending on the neighborhoods we grow up in, we're already seeing violence. We're already losing friends by the time we turn 10, or we're losing relatives to drugs and different things on that nature. So we're collecting and building up so much trauma and so much pain that we don't even realize that we're hurting. So by the time, we reach a certain point where it's kind of a breaking point, it's only two paths that we really are facing at that point. Either we break and we fall down a tunnel, or we try to figure out a way to build. For me, I did have the fortunate of being blessed with a family that kind of taught me how to work through things even when it was tough and hard for me. So I was able to try to figure out, this is what I need.
Right.
I was able, when I really started to hit my lowest, figure out like, well, I need to speak up. I need to say something.
Thank you.
And that's kind of what led me to photography. And the reason why I kind of bring that up is because when we deal with the youth, especially in Chicago, and the situations around gun violence, it always pans down to, a lot of times, the emotional statehood of everybody and what they're going through.
My brother.
You have individuals who are angry with weapons. And that's, at the end of the day, that combination never works out. Always kind of been taught that a cool mind with a weapon is more dangerous, but in all actuality, somebody who's traumatic, who's on edge, is actually more dangerous, because you don't know what exactly they're going to do. And if you're not allowing to intervene with them in these certain situations, you're leaving them out there in the streets, and you're leaving them to continue to perpetuate violence. So I do feel one of the ways we can reduce gun violence is by helping the youth find coping mechanisms for the things that they feel, for the emotions, the trauma, and the things that they go through in everyday life.
Okay. One thing I noticed you mentioned that photography is one of those avenues you find some solace, some peace. You are able to express your creativity through that art form as well as through that profession. Do you find that we need to sometimes not get hung up on the negativity of rap music or any of the music young people have, but learn to enjoy the beats, learn to enjoy the creativity in the process, learn to realize that that's a various stages to creating that art form that are good and not get stuck on some lyrics that may not be so good.
So I have an interesting. I remember when I was in one of my philosophy classes at FAMU. My teacher he asked us, "Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art?"
Okay, my brother.
And when I thought about it, my answer I didn't pick either answer. I said is dual. You have life that imitates art, and you have art that imitates life, because you have individuals who are actually living this life and who turns it into art. But on the flip side of it, you have individuals who watch this art come to life, and then they want to emulate that art for themselves. So it is a double-edged sword, but with that being said, when you can recognize the duality of it, that means at the end of the day, what these artists and what these people are talking about is actually what's still going on in everyday society.
Okay, good point.
When you have artists that is talking about they're going to shoot up the ops, they're going to do this with the ops, as bad as that may sound, is pointing out the issues that's going on.
Okay.
It's pointing to even how that some of these artists are talking about how they have to carry a gun to protect themselves from the op.
Okay.
It's as you may have artists that emulate it for the fun of it, but you have individuals that this is their life.
True.
This is what they know.
Very, unfortunately, very true.
And within the art of poetry, what rhythm and poetry is, what rap is, you have these individuals who are just telling their life. As bad, as raunchy, or even as sad or as gruesome as it is, a lot of times these are individuals telling their lives. And on the flip side of it, yeah, you have the posers, but they're only just telling the lives of other individuals that they see as profiting from that. So it's not necessarily always getting hung up on the lyrics and stuff. It's more or less listening to the music to start to identify solutions to the problems that they're talking about.
Okay, excuse me, but we're in our last 2 minutes, so I want you to, I want to take time out to mention a couple organizations, and then I want you to wrap up for us in that last minute, 90 seconds, okay? All right, a couple things going on. We have some recruitment going on by Green Corp Chicago. You have to be at least 18 years of age, a City of Chicago resident, and you must pass a drug screening. However, current marijuana use is not a barrier. That means they're not going to use that against you for employment. Okay, greencorpchicago.org. Also, there's programs with the Justice Network. Check that out. Access to Justice, A2J. All right, sponsored by our legislators in the Illinois Assembly and Safer Foundation. Contact Ken Woods. We also have mental health clinics to help those that are struggling with mental health. The one that we most familiar with in Lawndale is 1105 Southwestern. The number is 312-746-5906. Tommy Johnson, Mother's Day brunch, Saturday, Greater Open Door. Well, actually, BT Little Community Center, 1301 South Sawyer, and that is from 1 to 2, and that's Saturday the 13th, Mother's Day. Mothers come out if no one else come out. St. Agatha's Kids Arts Camp we'll talk about later this summer, and they have a journalism program and create the paper, The Chicago Leader, there. All right, Jeremy, you want to wrap up this last 50 seconds?
So I guess in the last, to any viewers out there, anyone that's watching it currently right now, don't be afraid to actually go to therapy.
Caesar, my mistake, Caesar. I gotta learn.
It's okay.
Forgive me.
Don't be afraid to seek therapy. And even on top of that, don't be afraid to shop around to find a therapist that works for you. A lot of people within our different communities may frown upon it, but there's nothing wrong with actually finding and seeking help to help you get over any burdens or any issues that you're going through in life. Don't feel intimidated by it, because understand it will only make you stronger in the long run.
All right. Let's stop the violence, the gun violence especially.